Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Linda, and I'm originally from Michigan, now living in the St. Louis metro area. I'm a college coach with School Match for You and have a daughter at University of Chicago.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy has a bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia and a master's degree from North Carolina State University. She works in private practice in Raleigh as a mental health therapist. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, a college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. Good afternoon, friends. I'm very excited to be meeting with you today. And there's two things we're going to focus on in today's episode. I'm going to walk you through research from the State of College Admissions. It's a survey that's done most years that asks admission officers, what are the most important factors in deciding who you admit? And then we'll transition to a combination. It's a combination of an interview with Chris Chilbert, who works for the federal government in Washington, D.C. He's an AI specialist with almost 30 years experience in the field. But he also answers a question that Don Trail from Muncie, Indiana, Ball State sent in, a student question. So you're getting a combination speak pipe question answer and an interview. It'll be a two-parter, and you're going to learn a lot about AI. I'm very excited about that. But friends, before we transition to our content today, I just want to ask if anybody had a speak pipe question that we announced on the air. Your book is coming, and your book has not arrived yet. Can you please just shoot me a text? I'm giving you my cell phone, which is 404-664-4340. 404-664-4340. Just shoot me a text. Tell me your name and the question that we read on the air. And I want to make sure that anyone who doesn't have a book gets their book this week. All right. So let's talk about the state of college admission. So let me just give you a little bit of background. I remember when I first learned about this, it was, 15 or so, maybe 20 years even ago now. They've been doing this survey. NACAC's been doing this survey for a little more than 20 years. And what they do is they reach out to admission officers and they give them 16 different areas that may influence who they decide to admit and not admit. And the admission office has to rank the categories in with four different options. Is this a considerably important factor? Is it moderately important? Is it limited importance, or does it have no importance? And what I like about this is it's data driven. So I can tell you the most important thing is, grades or curriculum or whatever, but this is data driven. And it's longitudinal because they do it year after year. So you can actually see if do certain things move? Do they change, or is it a constant where the same factors are the same factors? And what makes this one particularly interesting is they decided not to do it for all those years of the pandemic. So they haven't done it since 2019. I mean, this was an annual survey that they did every year. And so I'm going to be discussing it over the next couple of weeks with you. For today, I'm going to keep it really straightforward. We're going to do a countdown. That's right, a countdown. We're going to count down from 16 all the way to 1 in terms of the factors that were the most important. So 16th means of all the 16 things on the list, it was the least important of the 16. And what I'll do is I'll share the percentage of people that rank this factor to be considerably important and moderately important. And next week, I'll get more into discerning the data and, what does it really mean? What does this really mean for you as an applicant, for you as a parent, for you as a college counselor? But today, I'll just do the countdown and then next week, dive in more. All right, here we go. In 16th place, AP or IB scores. Okay. And just so you know, They usually send this out to hundreds of offices across different types of school, public and private. This year, 185 people participated in the survey. So subject test scores, AP or IB, only 1.1% said they were considerably important in their decision, and 22.2% said they're moderately important. Now, one of the reasons for that is IB scores you're not seeing really until a student has done high school, and AP scores, same thing, certainly for senior year. I mean, you can see 10th and 11th grade AP if they took the test, but you don't see 12th grade, which is really important. And so it's not like these scores aren't more important, but compared to the other factors, it came in 16 out of 16. And by the way, I want to quote something Janet Rapoli, former dean of admission at multiple places, but most recently Princeton, said, at a highly selective school, everything is important. So while some of these things are not important for moderately selective, less selective schools, they're all really important for your most selective schools. All right, in 15th place, state graduation exam scores. And I actually would have thought that would have been 16th, but came in 15th. 1.6% of people said that is considerably important. And look, only 6.5 said it's moderately important. So really, if I combine the moderate and the considerable, then that's only 8.1%, where with test scores, it was 23.3 said it was considerably or moderate. So really, it really was in last place when you look at it that way. I was just doing the ranking just by the top tier category. And one of the reasons why state graduation exam scores is so low is not everybody has them. They're not available. Not everybody has the state exam, and it's not always available on a transcript or communicated to a school. All right. In 14th place, work. That's right. Good old-fashioned work. How important is it that you see that a student has done work? The interesting thing about this particular study is it doesn't ask about community service. So I'd have to look at the question specifically, but I have a feeling that they're combining work and or service into one category. I'm going to find out an answer for that definitively, but that's what my gut says. I'm going to go back and look at exactly how the question was asked. All right, work. 2.2% said it is considerably important. And then for moderately important, 30.8. So about one in three did say work, and I'm assuming it's work or service. Consider that to be moderately important. Now, number 13. So far, we've had 16 subject tests, 15 state graduation scores, 14 work, 13 interview. And once again, I'm doing the ranking just off of the considerable important scale, 4.3%, if I said it was considerably important. If I also combine the moderately important into one category, then interview would drop all the way to 15th because only 8.6 said it was moderately important. And the biggest reason for this is most schools don't have the resources to do the interview, so it's a small percentage of schools doing interviews. All right, number 12. Sure, I got my numbers right. Got to count right here. 16, 15, 14, 13. Yes, 12. Portfolio. 4.9% considerably important. 10.8% moderately important. Of course, you're not going to have a portfolio if you're not applying to a school or program that requires a portfolio. So it's understandable why that would be on the lower end of these 16 things. Number 11, and I'm going to say a lot more about this next week. SAT or ACT scores came in number 11. 4.9% said considerably important, 25.4% moderately important. Once again, and then it goes on to say limited important. I can't give Sharon all this with you. 38.9, no importance, 30.8. Once again, if you combine the considerable with the moderate group, this would jump up a little bit higher than it is. I'm doing my rankings just off the one category, considerably important. So that's why it came in 11th. It would have been, it would have been a little different. Not too much though. Number 10, high school rank. 5.5% said that was considerably important. 22.4%, moderately important. High school rank. And we know that one reason for that is I was listening to a presentation from Tufts a few years ago now. and they said that only 26% of students now are coming in with a rank. So that's been a really big sea change in admissions, where back in the day, rank was much more prevalent. And there's lots of reasons why you don't see rank as much as you used to. A lot of it has to do with two main factors. One is rank introduces a competitiveness in the culture that pits one student against another, and it can lead to some very unhealthy behaviors, like especially if you do a weighted GPA based on APs and you got people skipping lunch and not sleeping and trying to out AP everybody, and just creating either a toxic culture within the school or an unhealthy behavior for the individual. That's one reason. The other reason has to do with the fact that I've always said this, especially selective schools, they have egos. So if they're a school that's used to taking kids from the top 10%, then they tend to have that mindset. And if you're at a highly selective school and you're in the middle of your class, it's going to hurt you if you have a rank, because schools are going to be like, oh, you're only in the middle of your class. But it could be that school you're in is more selective than the college. And so that's not always factored in. And so people who are at very competitive high schools where the rank's not that impressive. So most high schools have figured that out. And we're talking about selective privates and high-powered public suburban schools. And so they've said, why are we doing this? We're just hurting our kids. And therefore, they've gotten rid of it. And I support that, by the way. And in ninth place, extracurricular activities. 6.5% said considerably important. 44.3% did say moderately important. So now we do have the first one where if you combine the considerable with the moderate, you do hit that 50% number. 50.9 to be 50.8 to be exact, said it's considerable or moderately important. And one of the reasons why this is not even higher is there are certain schools that just crunch numbers and admit by the numbers, and your extracurriculars have absolutely nothing to do at all with who's admitted. Once again, I'm going to get more into the interpretation of the data next week. This week, I just want to do the countdown. Number 8, teacher recommendations. 10.8% of considerable importance, 40.5% moderate importance. Number 7, counselor recommendation, 11.9% considerably important, 40% moderately important. So the last 3, extracurriculars, teacher recs, counselor recs, all of those have the considerable and the moderate important number have exceeded 50%. And so I do think that's noteworthy to cross that threshold, because really considerable, moderate, important, they're both telling you that this is important. Just because it's not in the absolute top category doesn't mean it's not important. Okay, number 6, we're starting to really get up there. Demonstrated interest. The term they use is students' interest in attending, which is demonstrated interest. So here it's interesting because the considerable importance number is significantly higher than counselor rec, teacher rec, or extracurriculars. Comes in at 15.7%. But the moderately important number is 27.6%. So this one is a tad under 50% when you combine considerable and moderate. But that high intensity number pushed it all the way up to 6%. And once again, I could have done the countdown based on the two numbers combined, considerable and moderate. I'm just doing it based on you put this in the highest category. And that's how we're doing our countdown. Number 5, essay or writing sample, 18.9%, considerably important, 37.3%, moderately important. So we're now in the top 5. And so now we're on to all the big leagues, and everything moving forward, you're going to see numbers that really pop. So number 4, positive character attributes. What I often refer to as PQs, personal qualities. What Pomona calls PT, personal traits. 28.3%. Considerably important. The character of the applicant. So almost double anything that we've read so far. So that's a big one. And 37.5% say moderately important. So not only do we have the first time where the two numbers combine to be worth over 60, but they're over 65%. So basically 2 and 3 people say positive character attributes are either considerably or moderately important. And once again, when you consider that some schools, decent number of schools, are just crunching numbers, admitting by the numbers, pretty high number. Okay, we're down to the top 3. Drum roll, please. Strength of the high school curriculum, also known as rigor. And check out this number. So the highest number we've had before in the considerable importance category is 28.3. Strength of high school curriculum, 63.8. Furthermore, another 22.7 say moderately important. So a combination of over 86% say this is a big deal. And the last two, number 2, high school grades in all courses, what we call the cumulative GPA, 74.1, considerably important. 3 out of 4 said all your grades. Throw in another 18.9, say moderately important. We have grades coming in at 93%. Say grades are either considerably important or moderately important. And the winner, number 1, high school grades in college prep courses, oftentimes referred to as the academic GPA, math, English, science, social studies, foreign language, 76.8, considerable important, 15.1 in moderately important. And so that's our countdown. And next week, I'll come back with some more commentary on these factors. But I think it's important for you to know that when we say grades, rigor, and personal qualities are the most important things in an admissions decision, it's not just said willy-nilly. It's said based on data. Hopefully you found this interesting, and next week we'll do a deeper dive.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Okay, friends, the interview we have next with Chris Chilbert is great on a lot of levels. First of all, Chris Chilbert's in the listening family. He never misses an episode. He reached out to us because I just teased out that Don Trail from Ball State in Muncie has asked a question about AI, and we're actually doing a little bit of research to be able to answer it because we felt it was above our pay grade. Well, he's an AI expert working for the federal government, 30 years experience, and it's great listening, interviewing a podcast listener. Chris gives his bio. He talks about the buzz that is around AI. Chris answers a SpeakPipe question from Don Trail from Muncie, Indiana, about how AI is going to impact business. Chris tells us what we need to know about AI. Chris talks about the ethical issues around the use of AI. He talks to us about what the difference is between generative AI and regular AI. Chris talks about what AI can do and what it can't do. And Chris shares his advice on what college majors a student should pursue if they are interested in a career in AI. Listen and enjoy. Friends, you're in for a real treat today. I'm here with Chris Chilbert, and Chris is an AI expert with a lot of experience in the field. He's also a podcast listener, and he actually heard when we mentioned that we had a question come in from a student, Don Trail Johnson at Ball State, about AI, and he said, I'd be really happy to speak to that. And so we communicated back and forth, and we decided not only to let Chris answer that question, but just have a conversation about what we need to know about AI. So, Chris, you know how the drill is. You're a regular listener. Why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself, anything that you think might be of interest to our listeners.
Sure. Again, I'm a technology executive working for the federal government. And so with this interview, I have to make a slight caveat saying that anything I say is my own personal opinion on my own behalf and doesn't represent any of the views of my agency or my job. So, but with that as a background, I've been working in the technology field for many years, and I've worked both in the public and the private sector. Specifically have experience around areas of data and analytics in all aspects of technology. So when I heard this question, I thought, hey, I need to jump in and give my perspective on it.
No, it's just so much change going on. It's like, it's incredible what ChatGPT came out of nowhere and then had like 100 million downloads or something like that in no time. So have you been caught off guard by all of a sudden, the incredible buzz around AI, or did you sort of see this coming?
If you've worked around in and around technology, that buzz has been going for quite a long time. So ChatGPT was new, well, fairly new. I mean, there's been a couple versions. The version that got a lot of attention was ChatGPT 3, but that was the third version. And the company OpenAI, which created it's been around for a while. So if you've been following it, you've heard that. But beyond that, the concept of AI has been around for decades. It's not really anything that's new. It's been almost since actually before computing, right? It's been something that there's been theories about. One thing to understand about AI is what it actually is. It's hard sometimes for folks to wrap their arms around it and what it means. But all of us have been using AI technologies for several years. If you use a smart speaker such as Amazon Echo, if you use a smartphone and you talk to that, that's a form of AI that's responding to you. So it's not really anything new. There's been a lot of promise and a lot of hype. It just really exploded into the mainstream this year.
Yeah, and there's so many terms. It is a little overwhelming and confusing. And so, I mentioned we're going to have you answer Dontrell's question coming up here, but we also recently had a question from a mom in New Jersey who says she works in the field, and she wanted to know, based on generative AI, if essays are going to be obsolete. And we had Hillary Dickman answer that early October on the podcast. But is there a difference between generative AI and AI? I mean, to help us to understand the terminology here.
Yeah, it is difficult because there's a lot of different other words that start getting attached to AI, and there's lots of different types of AI. So AI I would say, is the broad term for a wide number of different types of technologies. So that includes generative AI. So, the term generative just means that if you provide an input, it can create something new on the outside. A lot of times AI was maybe making some type of a prediction, but this is actually creating something new. And so that has advanced a lot over the last couple of years and with that respect. I do have some thoughts on that question if you'd like to hear some of my thoughts on that, though, as well.
Yeah, but you're here for your thoughts. Fire away.
All right. So, I listened to the response on the podcast, and I thought that was really good. I think it was important. These technologies are still being developed, and industries are still figuring out how to use these technologies. I do think, change often happens slow at first, and it happens really quickly as more and more organizations and people get to be familiar with it. My personal view, partly informed by listening to this podcast over the last several months, though, is that I would hope that colleges don't get rid of the essay, because I think that when I've listened to you talk about and others talk about what are colleges actually trying to get from these essays, they're trying to get a sense of who the person is, who is this kid that's applying, and what can you bring to that. And AI isn't going to be able to provide that unique perspective. And even just earlier this week, my son's high school had a college admissions counselor from a particular college say, some of the best essays I've ever read were very mundane topics. My job working at Popeyes, for example. And AI is not going to be able to give that perspective. What you do see that AI might be able to do, and is more in some of the academic areas, right? If you've never read War and Peace, and I want to be able to write an essay on it and break that down. So so again, if you see these college essays as less about an academic essay and more telling about your personal story and talking about your personal qualities and your life a little bit and giving them more insight, I don't think AI will ever be able to do that. So I think that one way I think I would predict that colleges adapt is they may shift some of the prompts a little bit. So you might see some efforts there. I know you talked about also provide reading or writing samples from other areas. That's another way you can do this. Another aspect of this, though, is AI is good at particular tasks, but not necessarily holistically doing lots of different things. So what I mean by that is, it might be very good for students that from different backgrounds that may not be able to have really good college counseling or may not have as much access to support to help them brainstorm, to help them organize their ideas, to help them shift their writing into a more active voice, right? So those are things that people often get support from other people to do, that for editing and things like that. So I think it could be a good tool to support very specific tasks, and I think it could also maybe level the playing field a little bit too.
Yeah, and I guess we should go all the way back to the basics. AI just being an acronym for artificial intelligence. But tell us, Chris, what are the things you feel we need to know about AI for just the average civilian to be an informed human being? Like, what do we need to know?
I could go in a lot of different directions in that. So I would say this also will touch a little bit on the question that was asked by Don Trout, but it's when you look at AI, people, even the experts in the field, people that are building the tools, that are doing the research, if you talk to them or you listen to some of their interviews, they will tell you it's even hard for them to keep up with all the different advancements. It is moving rapidly, and you get a lot of different ideas about what comes out on the other end. People have a hard time predicting what this is going to mean. It is interesting to me that you've seen here living in the DC area, that there are people from these technology companies coming in asking the government to help provide some guide rails, right? And so there's just a lot happening there. But a few things to think about. One is you don't have to be a technologist necessarily to be able to use AI, or I wouldn't necessarily advocate everybody now go into engineering, things like that. There's a lot of questions that have to be thought about around the ethical use of AI and ways to use it in a creative way. You don't need to understand the underlying algorithms and the underlying technologies so much, but you do need to be able to really think about what the risks are of using AI. You need to think about whether it should be used for these different purposes, and I think there's a lot to be learned there. Some other things, as I was saying before, AI also is more than just ChatGPT. It is more than just what they call large language models or generative AI. It's been used in other areas, and it's continued to be developed. So it is something that's going to be with us, but it's still developing very rapidly.
Well, you teed it up, so let's make the next voice we hear Don Terrell and listen to his question.
Hello, Mark and friends. My name is Dontrell Johnson, and I'm about to be a sophomore at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. And my question today is, I'm currently a business analytics major, and I'm wondering, do you guys know how will AI affect my field and just maybe the business field as a whole?
So a couple thoughts on that. So one is going back to what actually is AI, and especially what is ChatGPT. So as I mentioned, it is something that has been around or thought of for a long time. One of the things that have changed over the years are, one, the amount of data that we have available to us and that can be stored and that can be processed, and the power of the processing power to use on that data. And so what AI is doing, it is applying these complex algorithms to large data sets in order to make predictions. And it's as simple as that. And from that simple description, you can get some very complex things. So what is happening in the business world? Well, gets back. It may not be the most satisfying answer. It is still emerging. So different industries are adopting at different rates for different reasons, right? So there are some industries that have some very well-defined use cases, and that you see that it being applied. Many industries have sensitive data. They have personal information. They may have medical information. They may have proprietary information about their products, and there's a lot more risks there when you start to use some of these products, and they want to make sure that they can protect that. Certain industries are more advanced than others in adopting new technologies, right? So you see it's uneven across different places. What I would say if I'm a business analytics major is that there's going to be a lot of opportunity. I can say in my own field, we have a strong demand for people who really understand data, who can use these tools and can think creatively about how to use and adopt some of these tools, again, in ethical and responsible ways to further the business. Businesses are always trying to come up with either new products, new services, improve their products or their services, find ways to reduce their costs. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity. There's a great article that just came out last week. It was a study done by Harvard University where they partnered with a consulting company, and they did a test where they gave the same tasks to a large number of junior consultants, and they told some of them to use ChatGPT to support the work that they're going to do, and they told others not to. And so what they found was pretty remarkable, and I think what it showed was ChatGPT can be a great tool to augment and supplement. So what they found was that the people that used ChatGPT were able to be something like 12% more productive. They got tasks done about 25% faster. But more importantly, the quality of their work was like 40% better based on the criteria that they had established. So they found it not necessarily replacing the type of work, but changing and augmenting the work that people did. So I think that you're going to see that initially tools like ChatGPT, tools like AI being used to supplement the work and help people. Over time, it's going to change jobs, and it's going to change jobs in ways that are hard to predict, but people that are more willing to and able to adopt and learn and grow. Again, college is one stop along your learning journey. I mean, I'm 30 years into my career now. I'm still having to learn and research and understand things as well. So I think that's the key point is it will have a change. It's going to depend on the industry. People that are able to understand data, understand and willing to try things out and think creatively and continuously learn throughout their careers are going to be the ones most able to adapt to it.
One of the things that I've noticed over the years, Chris, is that when something is hot in society, a lot of students start considering it as a field to pursue. And it makes sense because it's on your mind, you're hearing it all the time, and a lot of people are motivated by human good and making a difference in society. Case in point, when coronavirus broke out, there was a huge surge of interest in the medical field and specifically public health. So, with all this talk about AI, it's pretty inevitable to me that a lot of people are going to think, this sounds really, really cool. I would not mind a career in something related to artificial intelligence. I know that you can get comp sci degrees with even a specialization in artificial intelligence. There's also computer information systems out there, and then there's like data analytics. What is your advice from either a college major or just career ideas for someone who's thinking of pursuing this as a field?
I think all of those fields are going to have elements of AI incorporated into them. So anybody involved in understanding data and managing data throughout the whole life. So when you as a technologist, we look at data, we think of a life cycle of data. Right? How do we take data in? How do we manage that data so it can be analyzed and used? Again, AI also, one thing I should say about that is that's relevant to this question is that just like computing from the beginning, if you have bad data sets, you're going to have bad outputs from AI. So you need people who really understand that and understand how to work with that type of data. Understanding analytical tools, those are all good. So data science degrees, business analytics degrees, those are really good to have. I mentioned also those, some of those ethical questions. So I don't want to downplay some of the liberal arts that may not be as focused on this, because there are important questions that we have to be able to ask that are beyond just technology. So I think that this is an area of growth. It is an area that anybody going into the workforce is going to have to be able to, even if it's not directly involved in your job, it may have some impact. It's better to be able to go in with open eyes and know that it's something you're going to have to learn. Doesn't have to necessarily be a major. Actually, news reports yesterday, there's a company called LinkedIn. People use that for their profiles, and they're offering a whole bunch of embedded tools to find people who may not have college degrees but have certain types of experience that will allow
Wow.
them to be able to do this stuff. So you might start to see people or companies and organizations looking for specific skills, and anything in that whole area. I think the more you can develop that, if you want to get into space, I'd encourage it.
I was thinking of had a flashback to a story I've never shared on the podcast, but when you shared that, so when I started the company that I founded in 2010, Go School Match for You, and the first person I ever hired, her name was Audris Campbell. We still maintain a great relationship. She was in charge of like trying to create some kind of sliding scale for people that needed help but couldn't afford, to pay. But she ended up having to move to Boston because her husband was a high-level musician, and he accepted a position at the Berklee School of Music. But Audris had sociology degrees from Florida State, and a bachelor's from Florida State, and a master's from the University of Georgia. While her husband was pursuing music, she was getting a PhD at Boston University. She ended up not finishing the PhD, but she ended up being like incredibly marketable. She took a position with Gallup, and she was doing overall their survey research, and then Google reached out to her, and then all these people. I mean, she had all the companies you could think of were courting her services. Now, some of that she's just very good at what she does, but the relevance here is she was sharing with me, even that she never finished the doctorate, she took all these classes in data analysis. And so she was able to have all this data analysis on her resume. And it was that data analysis on her resume that opened up the door for all of these jobs. And so that probably doesn't surprise you based on what you just said.
No, not at all. I even think about the folks that I've had to hire. We were looking many times it's for some very specific experiences and skills. And so, and as I mentioned, again, it doesn't stop when you go to college or graduate from college. Again, this is a part of the journey, and I think it's important to when I give advice to young folks thinking about your career, thinking about growing into how are you going to grow and develop yourself over time, building these different types of skills and recognizing they're going to change. And so, as I was thinking about doing this interview before, I was also thinking about how things have changed. My grandfather worked for 44 years in a factory. He was a engraver at a Smith Corona typewriter factory. Same job for that entire time. We don't have jobs like that anymore, right? You don't have typewriters anymore, but they have. You're going to have, you've talked in the podcast about having different types of careers, but even if you're with the same organization, your job is going to change. You're going to have to grow. You're going to have to develop. And I do think in terms of, I think it is a great example because if you go down one route and it may not get you there, you will pick up some experiences and skills that can help you in other ways that you may not have thought about at the beginning.
I know from talking to you in the past that you value the liberal arts. You value the histories, the political sciences, the sociologies, the psychologies, and humanities as well. Is that because you see, value in the marketplace, or is it just that it makes you a more interesting, knowledgeable, insightful human being? Or do you also see a correlation with those skill sets, interdisciplinary thinking, critical thinking, communication skills, into the workplace?
Yeah, I think it's both, and it's from my experience over my career, seeing people that are have been able to contribute because they're and I talked about the importance of data and the importance of analytics. There's a great quote by Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, and he did a lot of research into decision making. And the quote that I wrote down from him was, "No one ever makes a decision based on a number. They need a story." And so, it's not just about your specific technical skills, which you do need. You also need to be able to have that interdisciplinary thinking, to be able to think critically, right? So, I've worked in places where we have the analysts that work in an area to identify types of fraud. So they don't just have to be able to analyze data. They have to be able to analyze data. They have to understand the field in which they're analyzing or looking for fraud. They have to be able to tie that knowledge together and then be able to bring it into a legal environment to be able to convince people who do not have technical backgrounds or don't necessarily have backgrounds in that particular field, and convince them that actually fraud or a crime had been committed. And so there's that ability to tie different types of knowledge together, to use some of your technical skills and knowledge of data, that all goes together. And the other part of it is ethical thinking, and the term you may hear a lot is responsible AI. What are the responsible uses in society? That is not just the technologists saying it. That's why our technologists are coming and asking for some guide rails from the government, is because they know that's needed, and they know that it's needed from people beyond just the folks that are building the tools.
Wow, that's deep. Friends, this concludes the first part of my interview with Chris Chilbert, a regular podcast listener and an AI expert. We hope you'll join us next week for the final part. Next week in the news, Julia and I will discuss a New York Times article about affirmative action for boys entitled, "There Was Definitely a Thumb on the Scale to Get Boys." Our question from a listener will also be with Julia. A SpeakPipe question was sent in following up on the original conversation that Julia and I had, asking which colleges accept students who are standard strong. And for our interview, we'll resume part 2 of 3 with Rick Clark and Brennan Barnard, and they're answering the controversial questions in college admissions today. And finally, our college spotlight, it will be Lisa and Linda talking about Lisa's recent trip to the University of Dayton. We're coming to Ohio. And friends, I close you out with a quote that's at the bottom of all of my emails. It's by Zig Ziglar, and it simply says this: "Your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude." See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 15. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Linda Depker, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joy Stucker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stalianos Dimitriou. And if you want to have a coaching session with Lisa, Linda, or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Our favorite method is for you to record your own voice at speakpipe.com/YCBK. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcast. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Monday and Thursday.